Okay, ready? Welcome to CineMcCue, where we chat all things film and faith through our lens of storytellers and as a creative, married duo. I'm Ian McCue, filmmaker, actor, and writer with over 10 years in the industry.
And I'm India, photographer and actress. Together we discuss the art of filmmaking and review what we're watching, all to discover what should go next in your CineMcCue. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Welcome back to CineMcCue. I'm
And
India.
I'm Ian.
I'm still India.
Still Ian.
And we're so glad you're here.
Yeah, welcome to our first episode of an actual film, episode 4. Woo!
Finally!
Who's excited?
You guys are probably like, wait, I thought we were talking about films. Why are we not talking about films?
Now we are.
We're here.
We are here.
We made it.
And as we said in the last episode, we are going to talk about Avatar: The Way of Water.
Brand new. If you're watching this right when it came out, we just saw Avatar.
It might even still be in theaters by the time we release this. So hopefully you get to experience it in a cinema.
Amazing. We watched it in 3D because we were debating, because I was like, I haven't seen a film in 3D in a decade.
Wow.
But Ian said that they were almost only going to release it in 3D.
I might be wrong on that, but I heard that somewhere. So I don't know how
maybe.
accurate that is.
But I'm so glad we went with the 3D. It didn't give me a headache or anything. Like, it was so fun, really enjoyable. And it just like made the whole film even richer than probably just normal.
Absolutely. And so it's a 3.5 hour long film. I don't know how much we're going to be able to fit into 30-40 minutes of this episode, but we have a couple talking points, about 4 each. Hopefully that will kind of guide our conversation, and you are more than welcome to join in the comments below. Say your 2 cents on whether you liked it or not, but either way, it is one of the most successful films of all time, and we are here to talk about it.
And stick around, because at the end of this episode, we're going to do our final scores. So we each have not discussed our talking points with each other, and they're going to help us determine the overall, like, how high on your CineMcCue list should this film be? Like, when should you watch this? And so I'm going to give my score, Ian will give his, and that'll hopefully kind of let you know our thoughts on how in demand this film should be for you.
Absolutely. So we are excited, and here we go. So do you have your first point? I will let you start. Ladies first. Chivalry should not be dead. And please go on with your first point and discussion point of what we should talk about Avatar: The Way of Water.
Wow, babe. So nice of you. Let me get my notes up. My first point is the environments. How can you not be obsessed with the environments that they made in that film? Every single environment that was new, whether they were in the trees or underwater or seeing this cool like blue life source situation, purple blue, the nighttime, the day, like every single scene did not miss. It was beautiful. And the thing that I was like struck by is when you're making a normal, you know, traditional film with a camera and you're location scouting, right? You're looking for a physical space to rent out and get permits for and set up your shot. So as a director, you have to come in with a game plan of like, what is this film going to be about? Where does it take place? How do I get those locations on my film? But when you're animating and it's like mostly CGI, the sheer like creativity of your own brain on creating something like that, and then trusting that like through storyboard and concept art, that same vision will come to life. Like so much planning, but the environments, the locations themselves, like not one single miss. I was baffled. Like not one pixel out of place ever in a 3.5 hour film.
The
I was
lighting
like,
and my goodness, I completely agree with you.
Unreal.
The world that James Cameron created here is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literal otherworldly. I saw this little interview that they were like, you had to have filmed that on a different planet, and he's like, you caught us because all this CGI stuff was, and talk of new technologies was all fake because we went to a different planet. Like, I believe it because every single image is perfect on execution of this world. And so I think that adds a whole new, I think, ability and appreciation for me in actors to act together with only their imagination of the space around them and what they're interacting with. Because if you have seen the behind the scenes, it's blue screens and it's, you know, things with cushions on them and a bunch of dots and people like...
It's like, that's not a cheetah coming at you. That's not like a green plant that's about to eat you.
That's not a whale that's about to like...
That's a man in a suit. Like
Absolutely. And so the imagination with these actors to be able to understand that because they sat down and saw, you know, the concept art and the storyboards and all of that and trusted the vision of these animators to be able to put everything together, and their interaction with the world and the environment was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Absolutely didn't miss.
Every animal created, every light beam going through the trees. Like, I completely agree with you.
Dust particle, like, I mean, that's just my top point.
Absolutely.
Did you have that on your list, or did you add something?
Sort of. And so I think just off of that point, though, is a new appreciation for me on God's creativity of our earth.
That was on my list.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't on my list, but I think that just kind of piggybacks off of this one, of us like being image bearers of God, right? The ultimate creator of not just Earth, but the universe. And for James Cameron and his team to come together to create a world, I'm like, wow, God had to do that with his voice. Like, he thought this up and just spoke oceans into existence and mountains and Yosemite National Park, one of our favorite places. And
so gorgeous.
We haven't gotten to travel nearly as much as we want to, but we know this planet is beautiful.
Yes.
And I'm super thankful for it. And I don't want to grow numb to how beautiful this planet is, which also allows me to appreciate how beautiful the world that James Cameron came up with is.
100%. Again, we are going to spoil things when we do these bigger episodes. So if you haven't seen it, stop. Don't,
Stop listening.
We're going to spoil some stuff. So the other point was the honor that the Na'vi, is it Na'vi or Na'vi? I think it's Na'vi. But the Na'vi people had for creation. Like, obviously in the first film they do a lot of talking about this, like, all of the creation is together and there's this like Mother Earth sort of concept,
the tree and
like life forces and stuff,
and respecting animals and the connection with them, the bonding with environment and creation.
Exactly. And I was going to say how, even though obviously if you're a Christian those elements aren't quite the same, like if you believe in God then you're not thinking of this like Mother Earth force, but it's such a similar parallel of like God's creation is his handiwork and it's an extension of God. And I feel like my heart got so grieved in both films by the way that humans, Americans, have come into the picture of this beautiful ecosystem and said, we want the fastest way, we'll destroy the most stuff with no regard if it means that we have money and power.
Yeah.
So they're utilizing and wringing the neck of this beautiful Pandora ecosystem for the tiny thing that is an element that makes them safe, powerful, whatever. And so I wrote down as a discussion point, like the honor that those people had for creation. And like, there's a huge, meta narrative for viewers to take out of that too, is like, how are we honoring God's creation? How are we caring for the earth and the creatures that are on it, understanding that all of them play a role in making it work? And I just like walked away like with both a heavy heart and also just a gratitude for the film that spent 3.5 hours just so that we could appreciate creation more and do more to protect it. So, so good.
Absolutely. And there was one point where I believe it was Jake Sully's character, when, spoiler alert again, but when they had to bury his son, right?
I cried through my 3D glasses.
Into this, I actually did. But when he goes into this sea anemone-esque tree, seaweed that, collects him into the ground. And then there's also this scene with, here I wrote it down because I just wanted to say the whale, but I think it's the Tolkien. Yeah. The whales type creatures and their memories, kind of like an elephant, and it was in this moment where he's like, these people are dangerous, they'll just destroy everything, they'll whatever. But then in that moment when he saw the connection and the memories and the everything that they've created around them, they're like, this is home. And we actually need to fight for this and protect this and keep this. Because his initial response was, they're just going to take everything and run over everyone. And then there came a point where he's like, I'm not okay with that actually, and I'm going to stand up for what I believe in and protecting this beautiful space that has people that I care about, memories of loved ones, and the way that they connected with the earth and preserved things that were precious to them and then fought for those things. And I think that was really cool that the environment became, and just as creation is for us, like I believe that God created it for us to enjoy, we now have a responsibility to tend and keep. And I see that reflected well in the Na'vi people. and it's heartbreaking. And just the opening shots of the flames coming down and destroying the Sully's home with no remorse. It's like I see both sides of that here on Earth, and my heart gets happy when I see people protect and love the planet, and it's heartbroken when I see people destroying it for personal gain, power, and purpose and money. So I completely agree with you there. The world was beautiful, and I think it should draw a new appreciation for us as humans for what we do have here.
Yeah.
So
it was hard.
That was your point. Sorry, I kind of took over there.
No, do you have another?
But and so going along with that, my first point was in the title and along with environment, but water in general.
Yes.
So the concept of water, it is literally the way of water. And they had to develop new technologies for motion capture. Like, it's so incredible, the talent.
What do you mean with new technologies? Okay.
Well, you want to talk about technologies?
Well, mention.
Yeah. So like the motion capture when they were doing water scenes,
they made something new for
They
this.
created a new software and technology for this film to be able to, capture so precisely, because there's so much water in this film. So that first of all is really cool. But my point was on water, and water here for us is life for everything, right? And so even though Jesus sustains us, like he built physical bodies for us that are sustained by water. And I just love in scripture that like before time even really began, when the earth was, formless and void, it says that the Spirit of God hovered over the waters.
Preach it.
And so there's two things that I get from this, which is beautiful. When he talks about hovering over the waters, that is a lot of times translated or understood as an anticipatory act. There's an anticipation of action about to occur. Mm-hmm. So when God was hovering, his Spirit was hovering, it's because he knew he was about to create.
Come on, somebody!
Out of this life source that would be... Didn't mean to do that.
Life Source? Directed by Ian McCue.
That is our film that is showing in LA. It's called Life Source.
Filmapalooza selection?
What? Didn't mean to do that. But there is an anticipation of action about to occur when over this formless and void water that had quote unquote nothing, and there wasn't life yet given. But then that very thing God used to be the basis of life for everything on this planet, which I think is super, super cool. And then also the Spirit of the Lord. Oh, and water a lot of times is in that void and formless is considered chaotic, right? So there was chaos and there was an anticipation of movement, and God meeting that chaos created life. Yeah. And I saw that in Avatar, The Way of Water, where they leaned on water for life and memories and beauty, and they trusted the chaoticness of and familiarity of what they thrived in, right? Like they leaned into it in their source of survival and protection and way of life, and they bonded with things in the water. And it was just really cool, a parallel of how God hovered over the waters, and I feel like they did the same thing where they saw the chaotic ocean, built these beautiful things while respecting nature, and then bonded with the oceans to create a beautiful life. Yeah. So I just think that there's a beautiful parallel of just water from the biblical narrative to Avatar, The Way of Water.
So good. I mean, the whole film. So I should also add that, like, obviously, if you're listening this far, if you're this far into the podcast and you're still with us, you either are planning to never watch it or you have already seen it and kind of know what happens. But the overview is it's the sequel to the first Avatar film, and these are tree people, like the Na'vi are tree people, and they, in the second film, are rushing away to save Jake Sully's life because someone's after him. So they go to this water tribe in a different island on the planet Pandora. And then they basically ask if they can learn their way of water and become those people. So that's that little, overarching recap if you haven't seen it and don't plan to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Definitely. But okay, so I already talked on environment. I already talked on creation and like honor. Another one of my points that I took away from the film was headship and fatherhood. So this is actually...
Interruption time. I literally have headship and fatherhood somewhere under. We'll get there. It's a little different of a point. We're married.
But so this is one of our... Since you guys are part of our marriage too now...
Third wheels.
This is one of the like points of discussion for Ian and I quite a bit is like complementarianism versus egalitarianism. Like... just the combo of like what the biblical place of women and men should be. And I was like appreciative of this, honestly, because when we started watching it, there was a moment where Jake Sully's character did something to protect his family right away. And Ian leaned over in the theater and was like, headship. And that's kind of like, not really a joke, but like, sometimes it's like silliness. But in that moment, it was like very serious. It's like, that is headship. Like, that is what the man should do to protect his family. And I think it can be really easy to, in this world where like Me Too happens and all these really real issues, like I see so much stuff that women have to go through that's not okay, and the suffering that women feel for like not being believed and like all these assaults, like all of this is very real. So I want to be very careful with noting that first. It's very real, very legitimate. And I think women are amazing. I am a woman. Like, yeah. I think women are bosses. I think we do so much. I think mothers are incredible. And I love seeing women like take charge in films and like be these awesome bosses. Yeah. But what I noticed is when like Ian said, oh, like headship in that film, I was like, wait, this is a really beautiful thing to have like a solid man of valor like seen as a healthy character taking up his biblical like place as the head of the household, so to speak, and as this like strong male character and like doing the right things to protect his family. So it was cool because it got me thinking about like, as much as I love seeing these boss women characters, and I want to see more of it too, I also want to see Hollywood continue to make a space for like solid, non-sucky men. Like, show us what men are supposed to be and they'll rise to that occasion. Like, solid men are hard to find. I lucked out, guys. I really lucked out. And I tell all my single friends, like, man, I wish you had an Ian. I wish there was more Ians in the world because I like love this guy.
Yeah.
And you do so much so well. But I was like, oh wow, this is also just as important as it is to see solid women run the world and like show up and have representation in film and the entertainment industry. I think
Katniss Everdeen somebody.
I think it's also important to see solid men in good examples of fatherhood, men who stay, men who fight for their family, men who sacrifice themselves. And that was a huge theme that I wasn't expecting to see in this film, but it showed up quite a bit. And like, it just made me really grateful for that. I was just like, wow, like as someone, like if there was a young boy watching this, like how cool for them to see something and be like, that is the kind of man I want to be. Like, it's really important, I think. And I think these days it doesn't get enough discussion because we're just like, oh, show us more women that are doing awesome things. And I'm like, yeah. It's great. But also show us some solid men out there too.
Yeah. So I completely agree with you, and this is actually one of my points as well.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm glad we agree.
we do. And I mean, if you look at it, so not to call these ones out, but if you look, I'm not even going to name specifics, but at animated comedies, right? Adult comedies.
I'll name one.
Well, sure.
The Simpsons.
So The Simpsons, exactly. The longest running TV show of all time, one of the most famous ones of all time, that Family Guy, all of it. What is it? It's this duncy, like...
kind of a loafy dad.
Loafy guy that is trying his best but is usually dumb and then funny and all that, like, and that's how a lot of men are represented in film anymore. And so I was super thankful in this one. My note that I had written was the headship and leadership of Jake Sully in this space. He left his home that was dangerous to protect his family. He sat with leadership there to understand their ways and respect them, and introduced his family to that space and said, like, do all you can to like love and protect these people as well. And then literally I wrote this and you kind of said it, but I was talking about the sacrifice.
Yeah.
Twice he was offered by the bad guy, Quaritch, I think is his name.
The like bad commander dude.
Absolutely. Yeah. Twice at least in the film, he said, I have your kid hostage and it's you or the kid. Like, and twice he was given with that, and immediately without any hesitation, Jake always said, I'll go. And granted, it was with like never without a fight really, but he was like, I will always lay down my life for my kid or my wife or my loved ones. And it wasn't an ask of, oh, maybe my wife should go because I'm important. He's like, no, this is my role. So for a personal experience, to talk about a little more of this before I get into my specifics, is couple weeks ago, India and I both woke up in the middle of the night to like a thud
so scary.
around our house. We thought it was inside our house.
It was terrifying.
And so in that moment, like, I'm not going to, as the man, nudge my wife and say, hey, go check that out. Oh my gosh, that was scary. Like, there is a natural understanding in our society that we as men should step up, go check out the house and carry the baseball bat and make sure that your family's safe. And like, that isn't a, you know, misogynistic men power, whatever. Like, we have a responsibility as men, I believe, and are called to lead, cultivate, and protect people around us, families, relationships. And Jake Sully, I think, did a beautiful job of that, of protecting his family, leading them into safer spaces, trusting them where they needed to be trusted, and sacrificing where he needed to sacrifice.
100%. Like, I'm all for Jesus feminism, but when there is a bump in the night, I'm out. I'm back. I'm like, nope.
And that's not a weakness for India.
But
that is knowing God's design on how, like, it is an honor for me to be able to protect you in those places, right?
Thank you. It's a reality, too, that if someone is a single mom or lives on their own and doesn't have, like, a man to, quote-unquote, protect them, you are not any less, like, valuable or, like, complete. Like, I'm not saying that you all need to, like, find a spouse to be a complete person. That is just, like, bad theology that I want to throw out the window. But what I am saying is that when there is a dynamic of a healthy, like, male and female relationship, it is really cool to, like, unlock these, like, God-given things where Ian's natural instinct is like, I'm gonna go check out and see if someone broke in. Stay here. Like, don't dare get up because that's not what you're supposed to do. And I appreciate and value that, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so some words to put to that as well is the single mothers out there and the women that are doing incredible things and maybe don't have as much opportunity or safe space or whatever is happening. India and I say frequently, where the ideal lacks, grace abounds. So if there isn't a man there to do what God has designed a man to do, to lead, cultivate, and protect, like, grace abounds in those spaces. But also where 100%. That is there, that doesn't make the woman lesser, that they have beautiful, amazing things that they're designed to do as well, that we believe it makes them completely equal, different, but 100%. Equal. And I think that was shown beautifully in this film about the male leadership, trusting the women leadership, coming together, protecting families, brothers sacrificing for sisters. Like, there's a natural understanding in society that we say, like, the boy goes down and takes the hit, right? And the girl goes free. And I think there's a beauty to that if you want to argue that in the comments, that's fine. We're willing to talk about it. But
hey, we'll talk about whatever. That's just what we think.
but I think that there's a beauty in understanding that. And women are bosses and do some amazing things. And in that film,
yes, I was going to say that too. I was going to say the other thing is, like, yes, there was, like, a strong sense of fatherhood and protection and, like, the men actually doing what men should do.
Yeah.
But there was also, like, no shortage of the women being complete bosses. Yeah. Again, spoiling it, there's this climax scene where the bad guy has the kids captive, basically, and things go south, and the oldest son dies. So he gets hit by one of the enemy's bullets, and this is Jake Sully's son, and so the mom sees her son, screams, cries, as one should, and then instantly turns around and just, like, goes ham on the bad guys.
Yeah.
And she is like, I just got this, like, mama bear sense of protection when I was watching that, of, like, go off. Like, do not mess with this woman. Like, you just killed her oldest son. And she was, like, not playing games. She's like, blah, 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 like, all this crazy action sequence. And it was, like, both, like, impressive, like, quote unquote, just to watch the, like, beauty of the choreography and everything, but also just, like, you were filled with her rage, like, in, like, a healthy way. Like, you know what I mean?
It was just heartbreak that would naturally cause, you could sympathize with where she was at because a mom just lost a son.
We're not condoning murder.
There's a beautiful love there that caused a reaction out of her that was understandable.
Yeah. Not condoning murder in any sense, but in that moment, you were just like, I get that rage. Because she was just like, I've had it. This enemy has taken my oldest kid and is trying to take my husband. no.
And was just like... the love of the family, though, in that space.
Yeah. It was like a holy rage.
Yeah, another place where I leaned over and I was like headship was the bad guy when, if you guys watch the film, was like, you know, if you let me live right now, I'm going to only ever come after you and your family, and I won't stop until you're all dead, sort of thing. And so Jake Sully was like, well, I'm not going to let that happen, and I'm going to defend my family now.
Yes.
I'm not going to run and let my family live in danger. I'm not going to go try to hide. He's like, oh, you just threatened this thing that I am called to protect and love. So I'm going to take care of this right now. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to man up and like do the thing necessary to protect my family.
Yeah.
Like in love. It came from a place of love, not a place of anger and hatred, which was the other side of it. Oh,
so good.
It was just a beautiful family dynamic that, man, there was so much respect and trust.
I think, honestly, I don't know if we've seen that many solid family-centric films.
Yeah.
Like it blockbuster Hollywood style, where there's a mom, a dad, 2 boys, and 2 girls are all in the same family, and each one had a huge role to play.
The mom and dad were together all that time, and they had 4 kids together, and they all played a role.
But they each became like warriors. They each had personality. They each, like, you saw them have screen time, quote unquote. Like, it was really interesting to see that much of them and like fall in love with each character. Whereas I feel like in most bigger films, it's hard to have 6 people have a lot of shared spotlight, but maybe that's partially why it was 3.5 hours long.
Going along with that, I have a quote that I'm going to say of James Cameron eventually at the end of this spiel that I'm giving off of this. But we were just talking about the beauty of the characters and the character development, and somebody challenged him, and I don't know the exact quote on this one, but they were like, you know, oh, it's 3.5 hours long. Why don't we cut out this hour of them just going through nature, riding the animals and running through trees and all this? And he was like, it's so beautiful. Like, what if the only point of that part of the film was to just see how beautiful it is and sit in the nature and fall in love with the world and fall in love with the characters interacting with the world and how the characters, you know, interact with each other while they're going through this world. And it was one of the first times I'd experienced in film in a long time that they didn't waste time, yet still just let you sit in the world that was created.
100%.
And so we're sitting here saying that we love the family dynamic, we love the character development, but actually James Cameron got a lot of flack for the simplicity of the story. And like, after 13 years, you couldn't have come up with a more complicated story. And his quote said, you can sum up the plot quite quickly, but you can't sum up the experience quickly.
Yeah.
And I loved that because so often we're like, oh, well, we want this super unique storyline that's never been told if you're going to spend, you know, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars and all of this. But he's like, we created a world of these characters going through this nature together and experiences together. And he's like, sure, the plot could be summed up quickly. It's all of my previous movies, you know, Titanic and Terminator 2 or whatever, with the destruction of it. Like, all of the, sure, there's aspects of all of his films in there, but it's the same writer, it's the same director. It's fine. That's fine to me. Because the experience, and that's why I would again say do it in 3D, was so beautiful to sit and just watch them laugh and mess up and fall off of a wild animal that they met. And I appreciated for once in a film they didn't rush it for an agenda. The agenda was literally just to appreciate the beauty of these people existing. So that is something that I really, really loved about the film. Yeah.
Well, we talked about that briefly after the film. I mentioned to you, like, how in most films we say it's like good editing. If someone's leaving their house and they close the door, you would just see a brief blip of them getting in the car, and then all of a sudden they're at the next person's house. You don't want to waste time, quote unquote, watching a character leave, grab their bag, put on their shoes, walk out the door, get in the car, drive down the street, park the car, get out of the car, go up to the neighbor's house. Like, it's normal in editing for us to critique something like that and be like, what a waste of time, get to the point.
We understood what happened, they drove a car and got there, don't show me.
Yes, but in this film, I'm so glad he took that time because, like you said, it was about the process of getting somewhere, and he would take 5 to 8 minutes of just showing you footage of this other world and how they would interact through it, which in one sense I was like, man, I wish I lived in a place like this. How cool to fly on these things and fly on these animals and go through trees. But then in another sense, it got me thinking of like our current world is so similar. Like, yes, gravity works in a little different way. We don't have the same creatures. We can't breathe underwater. But it also helped you fall in love with the world we have now. And I do think that's one of his maybe, you know, unspoken themes is like, don't look at Pandora as this unattainable, otherworldly place that just might never happen only in your dreams. Look at it as the potential that this earth has and start to care more about what we do have and savor all of it, the water, the trees, the nature. It just made me want to like get back out in nature.
Absolutely.
But it was just, yeah, stunning like to watch process of traveling be so beautiful.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, and the fact that I think that it helped us fall in love with the characters more, which made, you know, death more heart-wrenching and made victory more rewarding, was because I understood why that character loved a flower or loved an animal, or why they made fun of their sister, or why they felt, you know, like they longed to be like their father. And like I understood all that because we saw them exist.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think some people like TV shows more than movies, is because you get to sit with the character for 10 seasons and actually start to understand their motives of why they do what they do, instead of just quick character development and they just did this thing.
Yeah.
And not to spoil a future episode, but with like Lord of the Rings, something that you've mentioned is that you love that it's just a storyline in a world.
Yes.
And it took them 3 movies to accomplish the same story.
Right. Each one didn't end in a perfect bow and start
over with a new world, new whatever. We actually got to just venture with these characters, understand their motivations of why they do what they do and how they act, why they act, and relationships and the intricacies of everything.
Yeah.
Interaction with nature, interaction with each other, war, pain, hardship, death, love. It all just came out
all of life
in a more beautiful way. Yeah, because we got to sit with these characters in the minute things and still care about it because it was beautiful. And then that made us care even more about the things that mattered.
100%.
So.
Do you have any more points?
Do you?
I have one more.
Okay, I have some.
Okay.
So keep going.
You have some?
I think we kind of touched on them a little bit, but
Okay. My last talking point and discussion is just a line of dialogue that appeared, I think, 3 or 4 times in the film. And it's the phrase, "I see you." I'm gonna cry. It was so beautiful. So the whales, what are they called again?
the Tolkien.
Tolkien?
It's Tulkun.
Tolkun?
I didn't look up the
whales.
pronunciation. The big whales. You'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah, the cool whales.
The Finding Nemo little fin guy.
Huge creatures, and the mom of the water tribe of people knows how to kind of communicate with them, and they do this sort of sign language approach to talking to them, and she signs to this whale, "I see you," and then later a parental figure says it to a kid, "I see you," and then one more time right at the end after the oldest son has died, and is it Jake?
Yeah, Jake Sully.
And then Jake Sully sees him in a vision kind of thing, and he says, like, "I see you." Ugh!
Yeah, it connects with the memories of the trees, right? And the
yes,
graves.
literally for no other reason other than just those words together. Like, it feels like a better way of saying "I love you" for this, like, time and place. But it was just this, like, total acceptance, and especially when it was the 2 different species, like this, you know, person and this avatar and the whale are communicating somehow, and says, like, "I see you."
Through a form of sign language and tones and language again.
Yeah,
like
she refers to her as her, like, spirit sister, I think. And so it's just this really beautiful, again, talking about nature and everything's connected, but also this way of, like, transcending, you know, species, and, like, I see everything you're going through, even if we're not feeling it the same way. My little heart. Like, I got emotional with every time they said it, and I just thought, what a beautiful phrase to, like, take away from that film and, like, use in real life, but also just what would the world look like if we saw creatures, if we saw each other, if we saw everyone, and just were like, "I see everything you're going through." We don't have to be the same, don't have to do Oppression Olympics, I just see you.
Yeah.
End of sentence. And I was like struck by that a lot.
And so to bring this into kind of my everyday life and biblical perspective with that is us as Christians talk about being fully known yet fully loved by God, right? And so us as humans have a basic fear of rejection, of abandonment, of disapproval, of people not wanting us because we're messy. And if you're listening to this, you're a messy person. I'm sorry, we all are. Right?
He said it.
And that's what I love about our God that we believe in is he knows us fully. He knows our mess. And he's like, I still love you even in that. And I won't leave you there. I'm going to that's why he sent Jesus, sacrifice himself on the cross, rise again. So we're not left in our mess. And he's like, but yet in that mess, I still love you. I see you. Yeah. Right? And so that's why I think that's so powerful is because, the younger son with the Tolkien whale, the one that was rejected from society because of his choices and all of this, he understood that whale's failures in bringing more, of his friends and creatures into the battlefield and getting them killed. And, the Avatar and the Na'vi and all of them, the Water Tribe, don't believe in, the murder of things. And they believe that this Tolkien did that. Sorry if I'm getting that pronunciation wrong. I'm trying my best. But then this younger son, it was like, hey, I see that, but I also see your heart and that you've changed. And there is space for grace and forgiveness, and I see you. I know your flaws. I know your past, yet I still love you. You are my family now. He says that. And so that actually goes to my point, if I can.
Yeah,
because it goes right along. My last point with what you were saying is there's a natural, right here. Family is important, right? Focus on this more than romantic relationships. And so that's something I appreciated about this film was it didn't focus on, there's a boy in love with a girl, which is fine. But that's the storyline of a lot of things right now. But it was family. Yeah. It was tribe. It was race. It was the coming together of that. It was, this younger son to the Tolkien whale and saying, you are my family. I see you and you are what I love and cherish. And then also with the character Spider and Quaritch or whatever his name was, the bad guy, even though that he was now an avatar and wasn't really his father to son, there's still a moment where he didn't follow through with the murder of the daughter because he wanted to save his quote unquote son, and then Spider saved him later. Yeah. And there was just this relational aspect of love, even though that there was war, right? And so it was a boy to this Tolkien whale. It was lost human son and the Avatar Na'vi people to this reborn Avatar bad guy, to family of father and mother and their relationship and the relationship with their kids. I just love that this story leaned into beautiful relationships, sacrifice for each other, and that they would have done anything to save each other. They went to bat and sometimes pushed against their own people and voices that disagreed with them to bring about the hope for a Tolkien to change and to have hope for people in the future. So I think that was really cool, and I think we can give a lot more grace to people around us that maybe even if they messed up in the past, to set healthy boundaries, do all that stuff, whatever. But there's a space for grace and forgiveness, and there's a space to love people different than us. So
true. Ugh. So true. There's so much good stuff in this film. Obviously, we loved it. All right, so we're going to do a really quick scoring system. We're grading on acting, cinematography, story, kid-friendly yes or no, and depth, and then an overall score from me and you so that you would know when to watch this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go first?
Yeah, we'll put these down in the description below and see if you agree with us.
Yes.
So we'll go back and forth. We'll say acting, and then we'll move on from there. So, and you can give a quick description if you want to of why.
Cool.
Acting.
8.3.
6.7. Mine is because with CGI and cinematography, they did a really good job of creating the muscle movement and all of that. And it is so difficult to act with blue screens and all of that, but it is a little difficult to connect. I more so enjoyed watching the experience of the people, but I couldn't relate as much except for the story. But it was tough for me.
No, I agree. I gave it a higher score because I felt like the actors themselves had to do so much imagination and still deliver.
Which is why I almost gave it a higher score.
But it's okay.
But it's besides like the mother's cry and scream, it was hard to see a difference in emotion sometimes.
No, agree.
So that's, spoiler alert, my lowest rating of all of this.
All right, cinematography.
I said I don't even know, but probably a 9.8 out of 10.
Nice.
It's one of the best films I've ever seen cinematically, and it's hard to tell what's CGI, what's not, but the choice of camera angles, lighting, creation of the world building, the detail in everything, those camera operators are phenomenal. Like, well done. I 100%. Gave it a 9.8 out of 10.
I said 10. Because to me, like you said, it's not just cinematography in the normal sense of like we took a camera to a set and made this film. It was the creativity of using blue screens, of CGI, and I was always struck with, okay, you're making it feel like in a predominantly CGI film, you're still making it feel like there's a camera moving through a foreground, middle ground, background. There was one scene in particular where they were inside of a building and the outside was blown out. So that just means that the highlights were peaked, which is something we experience with using real cameras all the time. You're having a hard time like lighting a scenario because you have to keep the shadows lit, whatever. They did not have to do that, because if you're using a computer, you can animate it to be whatever, and they chose to make it feel natural to the human eye, so it still made it feel like a camera was moving through a space, and I was like flabbergasted.
It was incredible. Like the lighting, every detail, shadow, perfect. And so I don't know why I didn't give it a 10 out of 10, but 9.8.
Yeah. Okay, storyline.
Your turn.
Oh, I put 6 for story, because like we said, it is simple. It was still really beautiful, and I didn't want to give it a lower score because it was like a pretty simple, somewhat predictable. I think really early on in the film, you were like, I bet the older brother dies. And we made 1 or 2 other predictions of, oh, that bad guy is going to save that kid because they're kind of, So I give it a 6, but it was still such a beautiful story. It wasn't about plot, like we said earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I actually rated this higher than I thought. I originally had it in the 6-ish area, but I have a 7.2.
Okay.
And I think it's just because yet in the midst of simplicity of story, I still felt something. So that means that there was something heavy to it. And just because I can't explain it doesn't mean that the story wasn't good.
Totally.
So even though it's been told before, what story hasn't? And I think they did a good job of adding little things in here and there that just made the story a little more familiar to me. And I'm fine with that. So
okay, kid friendly.
I gave it a 7.2. Might be a little high because, again, have your conversation with your kids, what they're ready for. Is this good for a 6-year-old? Probably not. 12-year-old, maybe.
Sure.
There's some violence and all of that, but my 2 cents is there was a lot of butts.
Because the avatars are wearing
a lot of blue butts and
literal like
loincloths. Like it's all just a bunch of loincloths. But there was a human. A lot of butts. And so like be careful with that, right? Like
it's true.
It's
nothing was distasteful at all.
Absolutely.
Nothing was too violent. There is one scene where someone's arm gets
when literally
like flown off.
So like be careful there. It's war, right? And war is ugly.
Yeah. I gave it a 6 because I'm in the same boat. Like if we had kids that were all between like 8 and 14, I would say it's the perfect like
they're gonna be
perfect film to watch with the family, like
world.
Yeah, of that age, but like no younger than that probably.
Absolutely. Depth.
Okay, depth. I just did a 6 as far as like it's not like a cinematic, cinematically deep, plot-rich film, but it is nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars, and I think that's well deserved. So I give it that kind of score. I don't know, you?
I actually gave it an 8.6 because overall depth, I mean, I'm not going based off of just story, right?
Right.
Because even though the story lacked depth, quote unquote, the depth of the world and understanding India spilling on herself as she does.
I'm a child. Go ahead.
Got some underneath the chin there, but overall depth of the world that was created was
that's
cool.
True.
And so like depth of the film, I experienced and felt something in my soul that was unique and different than something that I had felt before.
I'm changing my score to 6.8.
And so I think depth for me, it made me feel something deep. And I was like, I'll just rate it higher then because so that depth was a higher score for me just because I was like, that just, I felt something coming away from that film, really and good. I was like, that was great. So
okay, Overall score.
Overall score.
How high should you prioritize this film? I said 9.3.
I said 9.4.
Yes!
I had it as a 9.3 originally, and I literally deleted it and clicked 0.1 higher.
I just think it's hard to make
good.
a film like that. It's very hard to make it good.
Yeah.
And they totally excelled. Like, I was just shocked. Did not miss every scene, every pixel.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful all around. And so I think overall, go watch it, make it a priority.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that well at that kind of film.
I'm excited. I didn't give anything a perfect score because Avatar 3 is actually already filmed and pretty much done and ready to go.
Wait, really?
Yeah. They filmed it at the same time as The Way of Water. And so I'm just excited to see what new things they did in this one that could possibly be better.
Wow.
So it is a quad. I always thought it was quadrilogy, but a quadrilogy, I think, is what James Cameron called it.
Oh, cool.
And he was like, I don't even know if that's a word, but
quadrilogy.
So a 9.35 is our ultimate rating for this film. Go watch it.
You heard it here, folks. Go watch this film.
It's worth it. Sometimes it's okay to just sit in the beauty of the film, and sure, nitpick if you want, but also maybe just sit and enjoy an amazing film.
Yeah. Be swept away in the bluey green waters of Pandora.
Absolutely.
And with that, thanks. Go watch this film. Hey, the next thing we're going to cover...
Episode 5 coming your way, and we will be talking about...
Yes, we will be talking about Wednesday. If you haven't seen the hit Netflix show Wednesday, it is a playoff of Wednesday Addams from the Addams Family. She is a sort of teen detective who's a little mellow.
I would say she's a black sheep of the community in a way. She's this oddball, quiet, gothic teenager.
That kind of into all the stuff the Addams Family would be into, but she is going to school and uncovers some of the stuff that is happening there at Nevermore Academy. So if you haven't seen Wednesday, binge it. It's only one season that's out right now on Netflix, and we will be spoiling that in the next episode and covering it so you have time to watch Wednesday on Netflix. But until then, thanks guys. Love ya. Let us know what you thought below.
Yep, and any suggestions of what else you would want us to talk about. Thank you for joining us today.
Yep.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.